good evening. Throwback Thursdays, and we'll be reading another bit of The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. And we'll just jump right in. Chapter 6. The training centre has a tower designed exclusively for the tributes and their teams. It will be our home until the actual games begin. Each district has an entire floor. You simply step into an elevator and press the number of your district. Easy enough to remember. I've ridden the elevator a couple of times in the Justice Building back in District 12, once to retrieve a medal for my father's death, and then yesterday to say my final goodbyes to my friends and family. But there's a dark and creaky thing that moves like a snail and smells like sour milk. The walls of this elevator are made of crystal, so you can watch people on the ground floor shrink to ants as you shoot up into the air. It's exhilarating, and I'm tempted to ask Effie Trinket if we can ride it again, but somehow that seems childish. Apparently, Effie Trinket's duties did not conclude at the station. She and Hamish will be overseeing us right into the arena. In a way, that's a plus, because at least she can be counted on to corral us around places on time, whereas we hadn't seen Hamish since he'd agreed to help us on the train, probably passed out somewhere. Effie Trinket, on the other hand, seems to be flying high. We're the first team she's ever chaperoned that made a splash at the opening ceremonies. She's complimentary about not just our costumes, but how we've conducted ourselves. And, to hear her tell it, Effie knows someone, or rather everyone, in the capital, and has been talking us up all day, trying to win us sponsors. I've been very mysterious, though, she says, her eyes squint half shut. But of course, Hamish hasn't bothered to tell me your strategies. But I've done my best with what I can work with. How Katniss sacrificed herself for her sister. How you've both successfully struggled to overcome the barbarianism of your district. Barbarianism? That's ironic coming from a woman helping to prepare us for slaughter. And what's she basing our success on? Our table manners? Everyone has their reservations, naturally. You being from the coal district. But I said that this was very clever of me. I says, well, if you put enough pressure on coal, it turns into pearls. Effie beams at us so brightly that we've had no choice but to respond enthusiastically to her cleverness, even though it's wrong. Coal doesn't turn into pearls. They grow in shellfish. Possibly she meant coal turns into diamonds, but that's untrue too. I've heard they have some sort of machine in District 1 that can turn graphite into diamonds, but we don't mine graphite in District 12. It was part of District 13's job until they were destroyed. I wonder if the people she's been plugging us to all day either know or care. Unfortunately, I can't seal the sponsor deals for you. Only Hamish can do that, says Effie grimly. But don't worry, I'll get him to the table at gunpoint if necessary. Although lacking in many departments, Effie Trinket has a certain determination I have to admire. My quarters are larger than our entire house back home. They're plush, like a train car, but of so many automatic gadgets, I'm sure I won't have time to press all the buttons. The shower alone has a panel. There's 100 options that you can choose, regulating water temperature, pressure, soaps, shampoos, scents, oils, and massaging sponges. When you step out onto the mat, heaters come on and blow dry your body. Instead of struggling with knots in my wet hair, I merely place my hand on a box that sends a current through my scalp, untangling, parting, and drying my hair almost instantly. It floats down to my shoulders in a glossy curtain. I program the wardrobe for an outfit to my taste. The windows zoom in and out on parts of the city at my command. You only need to whisper the type of food from a gigantic menu into a mouthpiece, and it appears, hot and steamy, before you in less than a minute. I walk around the room eating goose liver and puffy bread until there's a knock on the door. Effie calling me for dinner. Good, I'm starving. Peta, Cinna, and Portia are standing out on the balcony that overlooks the Capitol when we enter the dining room. I'm glad to see the stylists, particularly after I hear that Hamish will be joining us. A meal presided over by just Effie and Hamish is bound to be a disaster. Besides, dinner isn't really about food, it's about planning our strategies. Cinna and Portia have already proven how valuable they are. A silent young man dressed in a white tunic offers us all stemmed glasses of wine. I think about turning mine down, but I've never had wine, except the homemade stuff my mother uses for coughs. And when will I get a chance to try it again? I take a sip of the tart, dry liquid and secretly think it can be improved with a few spoonfuls of honey. Hamish shows up just as dinner is being served. It looks as if he's had his own stylist because he's clean and groomed and about as sober as I've ever seen him. He doesn't refuse the offer of wine, but when he starts on his soup, I realise it's the first time I've seen him eat. Maybe he really will pull himself together long enough to help us. Cinna and Portia seem to have a civilised effect on Hamish and Effie. At least they're addressing each other directly, or decently. They both have nothing but praise for our stylist's opening act. While they make small talk, I concentrate on the meal. Mushroom soup, bitter greens, with tomatoes the size of peas, rare roast beef, sliced as thin as paper, noodles in a green sauce, cheese that melts on your tongue, served with the sweet blue grapes, and servers, all young people dressed in white tunics, like the one who gave us wine. They move wordlessly to and from the table, keeping the platters and glasses full. About halfway through my glass of wine, my head starts to feel foggy, so I change to water instead. I don't like the feeling and hope it wears off soon. How Hamish can stand walking around like this full time is a mystery. I try to focus on the talk, which is turned to our interview costumes. When a girl sets a gorgeous looking cake on the table and deftly lights it, it blazes up and then the flames flicker around the edges for a while until it goes out. I have a moment of doubt. What makes it burn? Is it alcohol? I say, looking up at the girl. That's the last thing Oh, I know you. I can't place the name or time to the girl's face, but I'm certain of it. The dark red hair, the striking features, the porcelain white skin. But even as I utter the words, I feel my insides contracting with anxiety and guilt at the sight of her. And while I can't put it up or pull it up, I know some bad memories associated with her. The expression of terror that crosses her face only adds to my confusion and unease. She shakes her head in denial quickly and hurries away from the table. When I look back, the four adults are watching me like hawks. Don't be ridiculous, Katniss. How could you possibly know an Avox? Snaps Effie. The very thought. What's an Avox? I asked stupidly. Someone who's committed a crime. They cut her tongue so she can't speak, says Hamish. She's probably a traitor of some sort. Not likely you'd know her. And even if you did, you're not to speak to one of them unless it's to give an order, says Effie. Of course, you don't really know her. But I do know her, and I know that Hamish has mentioned the word traitor. And now that he's mentioned it, I remember from where. The disapproval is so high I could never admit it. No, I guess not, I stammer, and the wine is not helping. Peeta snaps her fingers. Deli Cartwright, that's who that was. I kept thinking she looked familiar as well, and I realised she's a dead ringer for Deli. Deli Cartwright is a pasty-faced, lumpy girl with yellow hair who looks about as much like our server as a beetle does a butterfly. She may also be the friendliest person on the planet. She smiles constantly at everyone in school, even me. I've never seen the girl with the red hair smile, but I jump on Peter's suggestion gratefully. Of course, that's who that I was thinking of. It must be the hair, I say. Something about the eyes too, says Peter. The energy at the table relaxes. Oh well, if that's all it is, says Cinna. And yes, the cake is spirits, but all the alcohol is burned off. I ordered it specifically in honour of your fiery debut. We eat the cake and move into the sitting room to watch the replay of the opening ceremonies that's being broadcast. A few of the other couples make a nice impression, but none of them can hold a candle to us. Even our own party lets out an ah as they, as they show us coming out of the remake centre. Whose idea was the hand holding, says Hamish. Cinna's, says Portia. Just the perfect touch of rebellion, says Hamish. Very nice. Rebellion? I have to think about that one for a moment, but then I remember the other couples standing stiffly apart, never touching or acknowledging each other, as if their fellow tribute did not exist, as if the games had already begun. I know what Hamish means. Presenting ourselves not as adversaries, but as friends, has distinguished us as much as the fiery costumes. Tomorrow morning is the first training session. Meet me for breakfast, and I'll tell you exactly how to play it, says Hamish to Peter and me. Now go get some sleep while the grown-ups talk. Peter and I walk together down the corridor to our rooms. When we get to the door, he leans against the frame, not blocking my entrance exactly, but insisting I pay attention to him. So, Deli Cartwright, I imagine finding her look-alike here. He's asking for an explanation. I'm tempted to give him one. We both know he covered for me, so here I am in his debt again. If I tell him the truth about the girl, somehow that might make things up. It can't hurt, really. Even if he repeated the story, it couldn't do me any harm. It was just something I witnessed. And he lied as much as I did about Deli Cartwright. I realize I do want to talk to somebody about the girl, someone who might be able to help me figure out her story. Gil would be my first choice, but it's unlikely I'll ever see Gil again. I try to think if telling Peter would give him any possible advantage over me, but I don't see how. Maybe sharing a confidence will actually make him believe I see him as a friend. Besides, the idea of the girl with her maimed tongue frightens me. She has reminded me why I'm here, not to model flashy costumes and eat delicacies, but to die a bloody death while crowds urge on my killer. To tell or not to tell? My brain still feels slow from the wine. I stare down the empty corridor, as if the decision lies there. Peter picks up on my hesitation. Have you been on the roof yet? I shake my head. Cinna showed me. You can practically see the whole city. The wind's a bit loud, though. I translate this to, no one will overhear us talking, in my head. You do have the sense that we might be under surveillance here? Can we just go up? Sure, come on, says Peter. I follow him to a flight of stairs that lead to the roof. There's a small dome-shaped room with a door to the outside. As we step into the cool, windy evening, I catch my breath at the view. The Capitol twinkles like a vast field of fireflies. Electricity in District 12 comes and goes. Usually we only have it for a few hours a day. Often the evenings are spent in candlelight. The only time you can count on it is when they're airing the games. I am sorry. I'm going to get a drink of water because my voice is struggling here. Be back 2 seconds very quickly. I'm back. Sorry about that. I've got a wee drink. I should just keep one beside me, shouldn't I? Now, where did we get to? asked why Cinna. Is that where we got to? Be no shortage ever. Pete and I walked to a railing at the edge of the roof. I looked straight down the side of the building to the street, which was buzzing with people. You can hear their cars, an occasional shout, and a strange metallic tinkling. In District 12, all would be thinking about his bed right now. I asked Cinna why they let us up here. Weren't they worried about some of the tributes that decide to jump over the side? Says Peter. What did he say? I asked. You can't, says Peter. He holds out his hand to seemingly empty space. There's a sharp zap, and he jerks it back. Some kind of electric field that throws you back off the roof. Always worried for our safety, I say, even though Cinna has shown Peter the roof. I wonder if we're supposed to be up here now, so late and alone. I've never seen tributes on the training centre roof before, but that doesn't mean that they're not being taped. Do you think they're watching us now? Maybe, he admits. Come see the garden. On the other side of the dome, they've built a garden with flower beds and potted trees. From the branches hang hundreds of wind chimes, which account for the tinkling I've heard. Here in the garden, on this windy night, there's enough to drown out two people who are not trying to be heard. Peter looks at me expectantly. I pretend to examine a blossom. We were hunting in the woods one day, hidden, waiting for game, I whisper. You and your father, he whispers back. No, my friend Gail. Suddenly all the birds stopped singing at once, except one, as if it was giving a warning call, and then we saw her. I'm not sure it was the same girl. A boy was with her. Their clothes were tattered. They had dark circles under their eyes from no sleep. They were running as if their lives depended on it, I say. For a moment I'm silent, and I remember the sight of the strange pair, clearly not from District 12, fleeing through the woods, that immobilized us. Later we wondered if we could have helped them escape. Perhaps we might have concealed them if we'd moved quickly. Gail and I were taken by surprise, yes, but we were both hunters. We know how animals look at bay. We knew the pair were in trouble as soon as we saw them, but we only watched. The hovercraft appeared out of nowhere, I continued to Peter. I mean, one moment the sky was empty, and the next it was there. It didn't make a sound, but they saw it. A net dropped on the girl, and it carried her up first. So fast, like an elevator. They shot some sort of spear through the boy. It was attached to a cable that hauled him up as well. I'm certain he was dead. I heard the girl scream once, the boy's name, I think, and then it was gone. The hovercraft vanished into thin air, and the birds began singing again, as if nothing had happened. Did they see you? Peter asked. I don't know. We were under a shelf of rock, I reply. But I do know. There was a moment after the bird call, but before the hovercraft, where the girl had seen us. She locked eyes with me and called out for help, but neither Gail or I responded. You're shivering, says Peter. The wind and the story have blown all the warmth from my body. The girl's scream. Had it been her last? Peter takes off his jacket and wraps it around my shoulders. I start to take a step back, but then I let him, deciding for a moment to accept both his jacket and his kindness. A friend would do that, right? They were from here, he asks, and secures a button at my neck. I nod. They had that capital look about them, the boy and the girl. Where do you suppose they were going? He asks. I don't know that, I say. District 12 is pretty much the end of the line. Beyond us there's only wilderness, if you don't count the ruins of District 13 that still smoulder from the toxic bombs. They show it on television occasionally, just to remind us, and I don't know why they would leave here. Hemit's called the Avox's traitors. Against what? It could only be the capital. But they had everything here, no cause to rebel. I'd leave here, Peter blurts out. Then he looks at me nervously. It was loud enough to hear above the chimes. He laughs. I'll go home now if they let me. But you have to admit, the food's prime. He's covered again. If that's all you've heard, it would just sound like the words of a scared tribute, not someone contemplating the unquestionable goodness of the capital. It's getting chilly. We'd better go in, he says. Inside the dome, it's warm and bright. His tone is conversational. Your friend Gale, he's the one who took your sister away in the reaping. Yes. Do you know him? I ask. Not really. I hear the girls talk about him a lot. I thought he was your cousin or something. You favour each other, he says. No, we're not related, I say. Peeta nods, unreadable. Did he come to say goodbye to you? Yes, I say, observing him carefully. So did your father. He brought me cookies. Peeta raises his eyebrows as if this is news, but after watching him lie so smoothly, I don't give this much weight. Really? Well, he likes you and your sister. I think he wishes he had a daughter instead of a house full of boys. The idea that I might have ever discussed this around the dinner table, at the bakery fire, just in passing to Peeta's house, gives me a start. It must have been when the mother was out of the room. He knew your mother when they were kids, says Peeta. Another surprise, but probably true. Oh yes, she grew up in town, I say. It seemed impolite to say that she never mentioned the baker except to compliment his bread. We're at my door. I give his back I give back his jacket. See you in the morning then. See you then, he says, and walks down the hall. When I open my door, the red-headed girl is there, collecting my unitard and boots from where I left them, from the floor before the shower. I want to apologize for possibly getting her in trouble earlier, but I remember I'm not supposed to speak to her unless I'm giving her an order. Oh, sorry, I say. I was supposed to get those back to Cinna. I'm sorry. Can you take them back to him? She avoids my eyes, gives a small nod, and holds out the door. Heads out of the door. I set out to tell her that I was sorry about dinner, but I know my apology runs much deeper, that I'm ashamed I never tried to help her in the woods, that I let the capital kill the boy and mutilate her without lifting a finger, just like I was watching the games. I kick off my shoes and climb under the covers in my clothes. My shivering hasn't stopped. Perhaps the girl doesn't even remember me, but I know she does. You don't forget the face of the person who was your last hope. I pull the covers up over my head, as if this will protect me from the red-headed girl who can't speak. I can feel her eyes staring at me, piercing through walls and doors and bedding. I wonder if she'll enjoy watching me die. And that's the end of chapter 6. Start chapter 7 in just a wee bit. Well, how's everyone's day going? Well, I hope. What's Nimbus up to? Sat in his wee corner. Oh, it's terrible. The only angle I have of him is just a wee fluffy bump. There, just above that shelf. He's almost the same colour as the ceiling. You can only tell he's there because the lines of the roof of his cage get cut off. There are his wheels underneath as well. He's got a big wheel he can run in. He sleeps in his wheel a lot as well. There's his wee hammock. Sleeping beside his hammock, not in it as well. Such as animals. But we'll continue with chapter 7. My slumbers are filled with disturbing dreams. The face of the red-headed girl entwines with gory images from earlier Hunger Games, with my mother withdrawn and unreachable, with Prim emaciated and terrified. I bolt up screaming for my father to run as the mine explodes into a million deadly bits of light. Dawn is breaking through the windows. The capital has a misty, haunted air. My head aches, and I must have bitten into the side of my cheek in the night. My tongue probes the ragged flesh, and I taste blood. Slowly, I drag myself out of bed to the shower. I arbitrarily punch buttons on the control board and end up hopping from foot to foot as alternating jets of icy cold and steaming water assault me. Then I'm deluged in a lemony foam that I have to scrape off with a heavy bristled brush. Oh well, at least my blood is flowing. When I'm dried and moisturized with lotion, I find an outfit that has been left out for me at the front of the wardrobe. Tight black trousers, a long-sleeved burgundy tunic, and leather shoes. I put my hair in the single braid down my back. This is the first time since the morning of the reaping that I resemble myself. No fancy clothes, or hair, or flaming capes. Just me, looking like I could be headed out for the woods. It calms me. Hamish didn't exactly give us a time for meat for breakfast, so no one has contacted me this morning, but I'm hungry. So I head down to the dining room, hoping there will be food. I'm not disappointed. While the table is empty, a long board off to the side has been laid with at least 20 dishes. A young man, an avox, stands to attention by the spread. When I ask if I can serve myself, he nods with assent. I load a plate with eggs, sausage, batter cakes covered in thick orange preserves, slices of pale purple melon. As I gorge myself, I watch the sun rise over the capital. I have a second plate of hot grain smothered in beef stew. Ugh. Finally, I fill the plate with rolls and sit at the table, breaking off bits and dipping them in hot chocolate, the way I did on the train. My mind wanders to my mother and Prim. They must be up. My mother's getting the breakfast of mush. Prim's milking her goat before school. Just 2 mornings ago, I was home. Can that be right? Yes, just 2. And now, how empty the house feels, even from a distance. What did they say that last night about my fiery debut at the games? Did it give them hope, or simply add to their terror when they saw the reality of 24 tributes circling each other, knowing only one can live? Hamish and Peeta come in. They bid me good morning and fill their plates. This makes me irritated that Peeta is wearing the exact same outfit I am. I need to say something to Cinna. This twins act is going to blow up in our faces once the games begin. Surely they must know this. Then I remember Hamish telling me to do exactly what the stylists tell me to do. If it were anyone but Cinna, I might be tempted to ignore them. But after last night's triumph, I don't have a lot of room to criticise his choices. I'm nervous about the training. There will be 3 days in which all the tributes practice together. On the last afternoon, we'll get a chance to perform in private for the game makers. The thought of meeting the other tributes face to face makes me queasy. I turn the roll I have taken from the basket over and over in my hands, but my appetite is gone. When Hamish has finished several platters of stew, he pushes back the plate with a sigh, takes a flask from his pocket and takes a long pull on it, and leans on his elbows on the table. So let's get down to business. Training. First off, if you like, I'll coach you separately. Decide now. Why would you coach us separately? I ask. Say if you had a secret skill that you might not want the other to know about, says Hamish. I exchange a look with Peeta. I don't have any secret skills, he says. I barely know what yours is, right? Oh, I already know what yours is, right? I mean, I've eaten enough of your squirrels. I never thought about Peeta eating the squirrels I shot. I'd always pictured the baker quietly going off and frying them up for himself. Not out of greed, but because the town's families usually eat expensive butcher meat, beef and chicken and horse. You can coach us together, I tell Hamish. Peeta nods. All right, so give me some idea of what you can do, says Hamish. I can't do anything, says Peeta, unless you count baking bread. Sorry, I don't. Katniss, I already know you're handy with a knife, says Haymitch. Not really, but I can hunt, I say, with a bow and arrow. And you're good, says Haymitch. I have to think about it. I've been putting food on the table for 4 years. That's no small task. I'm not as good as my father was, but he had more practice. I've a better aim than Gale. I've had more practice. He's a genius with traps and snares. I'm all right, I say. She's excellent, says Peeta. My father buys her squirrels. He always comments on how the arrows never pierce the body. Every one hits the eye. It's the same with the rabbits she sells to the butcher. She can even bring down deer. This assessment of my skills from Peeta takes me totally by surprise. First, that he ever noticed. Second, that he's been talking me up. What are you doing? I ask him suspiciously. What are you doing? If he's going to help you, he has to know what you're capable of. Don't don't underrate yourself, says Peeta. I don't know why, but this rubs me the wrong way. And about you? I've seen you in the market. You can lift a 50 kilogram bag of flour. I snap at him. Tell him that. That's not nothing. Yes, I'm sure the arena that will be full of bags of flour for me to chuck at people. It's not like I'm able to use a weapon. You know it isn't, he shoots back. He can wrestle, I tell Haymitch. He came in second in our school championship last year, only after his brother. And what use is that? How many times have you seen someone wrestle someone to death, says Peeta in disgust. There's always hand-to-hand combat. All you need to do all you need to come up with is a knife, and you'll at least stand a chance. And if I get jumped, I'm dead. I can hear my voice rise in anger. But you won't be. You'll be living up in some tree, eating raw squirrels and picking people off with your arrows. You know what my mother said to me when she came to say goodbye, as if to cheer me up? She says, maybe District 12 will finally have a winner. And then I realised she didn't mean me. She meant you, bursts out Peeta. Oh, she meant you, I say with a wave of dismissal. She said, she's a survivor, that one. She is, says Peeta. That pulls me up short. Did his mother really say that about me? Does she rate me over her son? I can see the pain in Peeta's eyes, and I know he isn't lying. Suddenly I'm behind the bakery, and I can feel the chill of the rain running down my back, the hollowness in my belly. I sound 11 years old when I speak, but only because someone helped me. Peeta's eyes flicker down to the roll in my hands. I know he remembers that day too, but he just shrugs. People will help you in the arena. They'll be tripping over each other to sponsor you. No more than you, I say. Peeta rolls his eyes at Haymitch. She has no idea the effect she can have. He runs his fingernail along the grain of wood on the table, refusing to look at me. What on earth does that mean? People help me? When we're the ones dying of starvation? No one helped me. No one except Peeta. Once I had something to barter with, things changed. I'm a tough traitor, or am I? What effect do I have? That I'm weak and needy? Is he suggesting that I had good deals because people pitied me? I try to think if that's true. Perhaps some of the merchants were a little generous with their trades, but I always attribute that to their long-standing relationship with my father. Besides, my game is first class. No one pitied me. I glore at the roll. Sure, he meant to insult me. After about a minute of this, Haymitch says, well then, well. Katniss, there's no guarantee that there'll be bows and arrows in the arena, but during your private session with the game makers, show them what you can do. Until then, stay clear of archery. Are you any good at trapping? I know a few basic snares, I mutter. That may be significant in terms of food, says Haymitch. And Peeta, she's right. Never underestimate your strength in the arena. Very often, physical power tilts the advantage to a player. In the training centre, they will have weights, but don't reveal how much you can lift in front of the other tributes. The plan's the same for both of you. You go to group training. Spend the time learning something you don't know. Throw a spear, swing a mace, learn how to tie a decent knot. Save showing what you're best at until your private sessions. Are we clear? Says Hamish. Peeta and I nod. One last thing. In public, I want you by each other's side every minute, says Hamish. We both start to object, but Hamish slams his hand on the table. Every minute. It's not open for discussion. You agreed to do as I said. You will be together. You will appear amicable to each other. Now get out. Meet Effie at the elevator at 10 tomorrow. We're at 10 for training. I bite my lip and stalk back to my room, making sure Peeta can hear the door slam. I sit on the bed, hating Hamish, hating Peeta, hating myself for mentioning that day long ago in the rain. It's such a joke. Peeta and I going along pretending to be friends, talking up each other's strengths, insisting each other take the credits for their abilities. Because in fact, at some point, we're going to have to knock it off and accept we're bitter adversaries, which I'd be prepared to do right now if it wasn't for Hamish's stupid instruction that we stick together in training. It's my own fault, I guess, for telling him he didn't need to coach us separately. But that didn't mean that I wanted to do everything with Peeta, who, by the way, clearly doesn't want to be partnered up with me either. I hear Peeta's voice in my head. She has no idea the effect she can have. Obviously meant to demean me, right? But a tiny part of me wonders if that was a compliment. That he meant I was appealing in some way. It's weird how much he's noticed me. Like the attention he's paid to my hunting, and apparently I've not been as oblivious to him as I imagined either. The flower, the wrestling, I've kept track of that boy with the bread. It's almost 10. I clean my teeth and smooth back my hair again. Anger temporarily blocked out my nervousness about meeting the other tributes. But now I can feel my anxiety rising again. By the time I meet Effie and Peeta in the elevator, I catch myself biting my nails. I stop at once. The actual training rooms are below the ground level of our building. With these elevators, the ride is less than a minute. The door opens to an enormous gymnasium filled with various weapons and obstacle courses. Though it's not yet 10, we are the last ones to arrive. The other tributes gather in a tense circle. They each have a cloth square with their district number pinned to their shirts. While someone pins the number 12 on my back, I do a quick assessment. Peeta and I are the only two who dressed alike. As soon as we join the circle, the head trainer, a tall, athletic woman named Atala, steps up and begins to explain the training schedule. Experts in each skill will remain at their stations. We will need to be free to travel from area to area as we choose, per our mentor's instructions. Some of the stations will teach survival skills, others fighting techniques. We are forbidden to engage in any combat exercise with other tributes. There are assistants on hand if we want to practice with a partner. When Atala begins to read down the list of the skill stations, my eyes can't help but flitting to the other tributes. It's the first time since we've been assembled on the ground in simple clothes. My heart sinks. Almost all the boys are at least half the height, half of, and at least half the girls are bigger than I am, even though many of the tributes have never been fed properly. You can see it in their bones, their skin, the hollow look in their eyes. I may be smaller naturally, but overall, my family's resourcefulness has given me an edge in that area. I stand straight, and while I'm thin, I'm strong. The meat and plants from the woods, combined with the exertion it took to get them, have given me a healthier body than most of those I see around me. The exceptions are the kids from wealthier districts and the volunteers, the ones who have been fed and trained throughout their lives for this moment. The tributes from 1, 2, and 4 traditionally have this look to them. It's technically against the rules to train tributes before they reach the capital, but it happens every year. In District 12, we call them the career tributes, or just the careers. And like as not, the winner will be one of them. The slight advantage I held coming from the training centre, my fiery entrance last night, seems to vanish in the presence of my competition. The other tributes were jealous of us, and not because we were amazing, but because our stylists were. Now I see nothing but contempt in the glasses of the career tributes. Each must have between 20 to 40 kilos on me. They project arrogance and brutality. When Atala releases us, they head straight for the deadliest looking weapons in the gym and handle them with ease. I'm thinking that it's lucky I'm a fast runner when Peter nudges my arm and I jump. He's still beside me, per Hamish's instructions. His expression is sober. Where would you like to start? I look around at the career tributes who are showing off, clearly trying to intimidate the field. Then at the others, the underfed, the incompetent, shakily having their first lessons with a knife or an axe. I suppose we tie some knots, I say. Right you are, says Peter. We cross to an empty station where the trainer seems pleased to have students. I get the feeling the knot tying class is not the Hunger Games' hotspot. When he realizes I know something about snares, he shows us a simple, excellent trap that will leave a human competitor dangling from the leg from a tree. Oh, is that camera all right? It is, it's back online. I saw that flash out of the corner of my eye. I'm sorry if anyone's leaving messages. I haven't got to. It's hard when you're reading, obviously, to keep checking chat. So forgive me if I've ignored anybody. Where were we? We concentrate on this one skill for an hour until both of us have mastered it. Then we move on to camouflage. Peter genuinely seems to enjoy this station, swirling a combination of mud and clay and berry juices around on his pale skin, weaving disguises from vines and leaves. The trainer who runs the camouflage station is full of enthusiasm at his work. I do the cakes, Peter admits to me. The cakes? I ask. I've been preoccupied with watching the boy from District 2 send a spear through a dummy's heart from 15 metres. What cakes? At home, the iced ones for the bakery, he says. He means the ones they display in the windows. Fancy cakes with flowers and pretty things painted in frosting. They're for birthdays and New Year's Day. When we're in the square, Prim always drags me over to admire them, although would never be able to afford one. There's little enough beauty in District 12, though, so I can hardly deny her this. I look more critically at the design on Peter's arm. The alternating pattern of light and dark suggests sunlight falling on the leaves in the woods. I wonder how he knows this, since I doubt he's ever been beyond the fence. Has he been able to pick this up from just that scraggly old apple tree in his back garden? Somehow the whole thing, his skill, those inaccessible cakes, the praise from the camouflage expert, annoys me. It's lovely. If only you could frost somebody to death, I say. Don't be so superior. You can never tell what you'll find in the arena. So it's actually a gigantic cake, begins Peter. Say we move on, I break in. So the next 3 days pass, with Peter and me going quietly from station to station. We do pick up some valuable skills, from starting fires to knife throwing to making shelter. Despite Hamish's order to appear mediocre, Peter excels in hand-to-hand combat, and I sweep the edible plants test without blinking an eye. We steer clear of archery and weightlifting, though. I want to save those for our private sessions. The game makers appeared early on the first day, 20 or so men and women dressed in deep purple robes. They sit in the elevated stands that surround the gymnasium, sometimes wandering about to watch us, jotting down notes, other times eating, at the endless banquet that has been set for them, ignoring the lot of us. But they do seem to be keeping their eye on the District 12 tributes. Several times I've looked up to find one fixated on me. They consult with the trainers during our meals as well, and we see them gathered together when we come back. Breakfast and dinner are served on our floor, but at lunch, the 24 of us eat in the dining room of the gymnasium. Food is arranged on carts around the room and you serve yourself. The career tributes tend to gather rowdily around one table as if to prove their superiority, that they have no fear of one another and consider the rest of us beneath notice. Most of the other tributes sit alone, like lost sheep. No one says a word to us. No one says a word to us. Peter and I eat together, and since Hamish keeps dogging us about trying to keep up a friendly conversation during meals, that sentence didn't make sense, did it? Peter and I eat together, and since Hamish keeps dogging us about it, try to keep up a friendly conversation during the meals. It's not an easy to find a topic. Talking of home is painful. Talking of the present, unbearable. One day, Peter empties our bread basket and points out how they've been careful to include types from districts along with the refined bread of the capital. The fish-shaped loaf, tinted green with seaweed from District 4. The crescent moon roll dotted with seeds from District 11. Somehow, although it's made from the same stuff, it looks a lot more appetizing than the ugly drop biscuits that are standard fare at home. And there you have it, says Peter, scooping the breads back into the basket. You certainly know a lot, I say. Only about bread, he says. Okay, now laugh as if I've said something funny. We both give a somewhat convincing laugh and ignore the stares from around the room. All right, I'll keep smiling pleasantly and you talk, says Peter. It's wearing us both out, Hamish's direction to be friendly. Because ever since I slammed my door, there's been a chill in the air between us. But we have our orders. Did I ever tell you about the time I was chased by a bear? I asked. No, but it sounds fascinating, says Peter. I try to animate my face as I recall the event, a true story, in which I had foolishly challenged a black bear over the rights to a beehive. Peter laughs and asks questions, right on cue. He's much better at this than I am. On the second day, we're taking a shot at spear throwing. He whispers to me, I think we have a shadow. I throw my spear, which I'm not too bad at actually, if I don't have to throw too far, and I see a little girl from District 11 standing back a bit, watching us. She's the 12-year-old, the one who reminded me so much of Prim in stature. Up close she looks about 10. She has bright, dark eyes and satiny brown skin, and stands tilted up on her toes, with her arms slightly extended to her sides, as if she's ready to take wing at the slightest sound. It's impossible not to think of a bird. I pick up another spear while Peter throws. I think her name's Rue, I say softly. I bite my lip. Rue is a small yellow flower that grows in the meadow. Rue, Primrose. Neither of them could tip the scale at 30 kilos soaking wet. What can we do about it? I ask him, more harshly than I intended. Nothing to do, he says back. Just making conversation. Now that I know she's there, it's hard to ignore the child. She slips up and joins us at different stations. Like me, she's clever with plants, climbs swiftly, and has good aim. She can hit the target every time with a slingshot. But what's a slingshot against a 100-kilo male with a sword? Tell that to David Goliath. Back on the District 12 floor, Hamish and Effie grill us throughout breakfast and dinner about every moment of the day. What we did, who watched us, how the other tributes are sized up. Cinna and Portia aren't around, so there's no one to add any sanity to the meals. Not that Hamish and Effie are fighting any more. Instead, they seem to be of one mind, determined to whip us into shape, full of endless directions about what we should do and not to do in training. Peter is more patient. I become fed up and surly. When we finally escape to bed, on the second night, Peter mumbles, "Someone ought to get Hamish a drink." I make a sound that's somewhere between a snort and a laugh, then catch myself. It's messing with my mind too much, trying to keep straight when we're supposed to be friends when we're not. At least then, when we get into the arena, I'll know where we stand. Don't, don't let's pretend when there's no one around. All right, Katniss, he says tiredly. After that, we only talk in front of people. On the third day of training, they start to call us out for lunch for our private sessions with the game makers. District by district, first the boy, then the girl tribute. As usual, District 12 is slated to go last. We linger in the dining room, unsure of what else to do or where else to go. No one comes back after they've left. As the room empties, the pressure to appear friendly lightens. By the time they call Rue, we are left alone. We sit in silence until they summon Peeta. He rises. Remember what Haymitch said about being sure to throw the weights? The words come out of my mouth without permission. Thanks, I will, he says. You shoot straight. I nod. I don't know why I said anything at all. Although, if I'm going to lose, I'd rather Peeta win than the others. Better for our district, for my mother and Prim. About after 15 minutes, they call my name. I smooth my hair, set my shoulders back, and walk into the gymnasium. Instantly, I know I'm in trouble. They've been here too long, the game makers. Sat through 23 other demonstrations, had too much wine, most of them. Want more than anything to go home. There's nothing I can do but continue with the plan and walk to the archery station. Oh, the weapons. I've been itching to get my hands on them for days. Bows made of wood and plastic and metal and materials I can't even name. Arrows with feathers cut in flawless uniform lines. I choose a bow, string it, and sling the matching quiver of arrows over my shoulders. There's a shooting range, but it's much too limited, with a standard bullseye and human silhouettes. I walk to the center of the gymnasium, pick my first target, the dummy used for knife practice. Even as I pull back on the bow, I know something is wrong. The string's tighter than the one I use at home. The arrow's more rigid. I miss the dummy by a few centimeters. I lose what little attention I'd been commanding. For a moment, I'm humiliated. Then I head back to the bullseye, shoot again and again until I get the feel of the new weapons. Back in the center of the gymnasium, I take my initial position, skewer the dummy right through the heart, then sever the rope that holds the sandbags for boxing, and the bag splits open and slams to the ground. Without pausing, I shoulder roll forward, come up on one knee, and send an arrow into one of the hanging lights high above the gymnasium floor. A shower of sparks burst from the fixture. It's excellent shooting. I turn to the game makers. A few are nodding approval, but the majority of them are fixated on the roast pig that had just arrived at their banquet table. Suddenly I'm furious that with my life on the line, they don't even have the decency to pay attention to me. I'm being upstaged by a dead pig. My heart starts to pound. I can feel my face burning. Without thinking, I pull an arrow from my quiver and send it straight at the game maker's table. I hear shouts of alarm as people stumble back. The arrow skewers the apple in the pig's mouth, pins it to the wall. Everyone stares at me in disbelief. Thank you for your consideration, I say. Then I give a slight bow and walk straight towards the exit without being dismissed. End of chapter 7. Well, we'll leave it there for tonight. Thank you for listening. What are we on? We're on Thursday. Friday tomorrow. Ooh, it's Harry Potter. join me. It should be around the same time. If not, we'll pick it up on Saturday. Saturdays are Harry Potter, and yeah, we might do more Hunger Games. Thank you for listening.